Detroit Pistons select Luke Kennard from Duke University. The Utah Jazz select Darius Baisley from Cincinnati, Ohio.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Triple Double Podcast. My name is Corey Albertson. We've got Jason Morrow of 270 Hoops on here as our producer, and we've got a podcast favorite, one of the legends of Ohio high school basketball, Kurt Stubbs, joining us today. Stubbs, what's going on?
Oh, man, not too much. Just sitting here wondering, just thinking about Morrow right now, and how he must be feeling with the season sweep of the Buckeyes over the team up north. Not only are we beating them in football now, we're sweeping them in basketball. So I'm sure Morrow's feeling pretty good.
If I had to use one word to describe Morrow, I would say he's chirping.
That athletic department might want to hire a coach who's not a former player, because they just can't beat their rival if they do hire former players. So just saying.
Wow, Morrow loves it. Morrow absolutely loves it. So, well, Stubbs, wow, that's something. So, what we wanted to come on today is, the sectional tournament is over. I know some places aren't even really using that term or calling it whatever they call it, but we're into the district semifinal round in some places. We're into the district final round in some other places, depending on what district you're in. And, anything before the district sometimes feels like a little bit of a waste of a time to do a preview podcast. There's some teams in there that just aren't going to win, but once you get into the districts, it starts to get really exciting. The games start to mean a lot, and you're somebody who knows about the different regions and the different divisions, the small towns, the city ball, as well as most. So, let's talk a little bit here about some tournament basketball.
All right, man, let's do it.
Well, one thing I wanted to bring up before we do that, which is something that's kind of hot in Ohio high school basketball right now, which is the dismissal at Villa Angela St. Joe's High School in Cleveland of Babe Kwasniak. We just had Babe on the podcast here a few months ago. Was one of the favorite episodes we've ever done in my opinion, and I know Jason likes the episode as well, and learned a lot of things from Coach Kwasniak, and he had a little bit of an old school approach, and really held guys accountable, but there was not a situation where he always saw eye to eye with the administration, and after many years of having a Kwasniak at the helm of St. Joe's, that's not going to be the case next year, and I know you were very, very close with Babe over the years, so just talk about your thoughts on kind of what all transpired there.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're looking at kind of the end of an era here. His dad was ultra successful as an assistant and head coach there, and then when Babe took over in I think it was before the 2010-2011 season, VASJ was kind of in shambles as far as just the school in general was basically about to close the doors, which is hard to believe for a school that has as much history, not only team success-wise, but individual success-wise. And Babe kind of reunited that, or, lit that fire up again at St. Joe's. When I look back on Babe's tenure there, I know Babe very well, and I could see where, maybe he clashed with people that didn't see things the way he did as far as the way he wanted to run his program. More of that military style, obviously his background. But when you think about it, and when I think about it, I think of 5 straight state championship games, 3 of which he won. 5 straight state championship game appearances is incredible. He did it in Division 4. He did it in Division 3. And think about the run of, he had, depending upon what service you're looking at least 2 top 30, top 40 guys in his time there with Bragg and then Gaffney, who ended up, leaving. But and that's not counting the Derek Pardons, the Brian Parkers, DeMonte Flanagan, Boo Gibson, he even had Jalen Harris, a wide receiver at Ohio State, for a while. Just an incredible run. I think they were 48-6 under him in the tournament, which is absolutely insane.
Right, and I mean that's what I kind of thought you would say, and he certainly leaves a lasting legacy, and as somebody who is just in his 40s, I think we'll see him coach again. It's just a matter of finding the right fit. That's the style that he coaches in, the way he runs the program. You have to find an AD that's going to be able to support that, and I don't know what happened at VASJ, but hopefully when he goes back there, over the years in whatever capacity he goes back there, he'll be treated as somebody who, left the program in better status than when he arrived for the start of his head coaching tenure.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. And you've seen, like, on social media and stuff, a lot of people, big name people, have tweeted or, in support of him and hit the contributions he's had over the years, not only to St. Joe's, but just basketball in general. He's worked different things, Steph Curry skills thing. And so he's got around, especially when they were playing that national schedule, when he had that 2015 class. He really got around and got connected and networked, and people really started to know him outside of St. Joe's. So, like you said, he's young enough now that if he wants to do this again, I'm sure there's somebody, and it's got to be the right situation. It's got to be an administration that knows him and his personality coming in, and is going to be okay with the way he wants to run the program.
Absolutely. Well, let's move on to the state tournament then. Like I said, it's the beginning of district semifinals, district finals, depending on where you're at. We did push this podcast back one day in terms of recording it, so there were a couple games that happened in the state. I think I know about the one notable one, but hopefully we don't make any other mistakes here. But we usually go Division 1, 2, 3, 4. We'll go in reverse today. We'll save kind of the bigger boys for the end here. Want to make sure some of the small guys, the Stubbs specials, get some love. So Division 4 Stubbs, I'm not gonna run through all the districts and whatnot, but as we get to the district tournament, who are some of the teams that are on your radar as potential Final Four candidates?
Yeah, so I'll just do this by region. I jotted down 3 teams that I thought were possible contenders in the Dayton region. I think Jackson Center, they were on the doorstep last year. They were in a regional final. Their style of play allows them to compete really against anybody. Fort Laramie, I think, is a team that's kind of red hot right now, and they've played a lot of close games this year. They're coming off a big win over Botkins, and they're familiar with Jackson Center. They play in the same league. But I think the team that kind of makes everybody nervous in that region is the Wellington School out of Columbus. They're very talented, led by Elijah Meredith. I think, they've been there before. I think they were there 2 years in a row. So I think it's going to be one of those 3 teams out of there. Out of Athens, I think this is a 3-horse race. I think you got Grandview Heights with Brian Collier and Lachey, and then Highland Malvern out of the East District. I think the winner of that game moves on to Athens, and I think you're going to get a battle with one of those 2 teams in Grandview Heights to get to the state. Bowling Green, which is one of my favorite regions in the state, I think you've got Columbus Grove, Ottoville, who would meet in the district final if it happened. You got undefeated Antwerp. Toledo Christian has had a great season. Old Fort, Parkway. Interesting, Columbus Grove is undefeated. And they have Convoy Crestview in the district semis, which is kind of a scary game. They beat them 47-23 back in mid-December. But, Etzler was kind of banged up, just coming back from injury. I think they held him to 7 points that night. But Grove is definitely the favorite in that game. But, I mean, still, that's a tough game in a district semi when you have a player and an individual talent that good. But I still, I think Columbus Grove is definitely good enough to get to Columbus. And then in Canton, I think you're looking at Richmond Heights being obviously the clear-cut favorite. Dalton is another solid team. I know people would love to see McDonald with Zach Razil, who is actually Razil is chasing down Jay Burson and Luke Kennard with a legitimate chance to catch those two guys on a scoring list. And then another team I wanted to mention, South Central is a good team led by Simon Blair. They were in the regional last year as well. So those are the teams on my D4 radar.
Oh, that's a heck of a rundown. The two teams I've seen on that list are Ottoville. Saw them at Flying to the Hoop. They were extremely impressive that day. Have two kids with size that can shoot the ball. Josh Thorbon being a really, really good player. Both of their kids are juniors, but that team, seeing them at Flying to the Hoop in a game they won, I thought, yeah, I could see them, making a run at the state tournament without necessarily knowing the teams they play on a day-to-day basis. And then the other one being Richmond Heights. I saw them at the Play-by-Play Classic in Cleveland, and a very, very talented team, have all the pieces. You're not going to find a more athletic team in Division IV, and you're not going to find more than 4 or 5 teams in Ohio probably that are more athletic top to bottom in any division than them. So be interested to see what happens there. Division III, we're going to start to here to go by the region. So let's start. We'll start in my neck of the woods. Division III, the Dayton region. The favorites have got to be Cincinnati Taft, who doesn't have the great record that some of the small school teams tend to have. They have a high level of competition, probably played as tough of a Division III schedule in the state. Cincinnati Deer Park, who only has one loss, being to Wyoming, who's among the Division II favorites. Those are the two teams that everybody's talking about. I know you like CHCA, being Cincinnati Hills Christian Academy. I know you like Anna, potential sleepers. What do you think about that region?
Yeah, I'm with you on Taft. People kind of in the know kind of just look past that. I think they're maybe 17-7 or something like that, which is still really good considering not only the out-of-conference schedule they play, but, the teams they play in the CMAC as well. I think they're the favorite, to me, to come out of there. Deer Park has kind of, I don't want to say overachieved. They have talent, obviously, with Gentry Jr., who is very experienced. You kind of set me straight on CHCA the other day, but they are playing really good basketball. I think they've won about 20 in a row now.
Yeah.
Anna is definitely in the conversation. The kids on that team, Bixler and Leiniger and Hulskamp, those guys have a winning pedigree coming off a football state championship. And then I think Versailles, with only one loss on the season, Michael Stammen's had a really good year, player of the year in the MAC. And then National Trail, a team I'm pretty sure you saw last year with Cam Harrison and Zach Woodall. They're a really nice team as well. But I don't know in a one-game scenario, anybody that's left in that group that we just mentioned could win. But I think, Taft with Griffin and Smith, I think that's just a tough matchup for those teams in the region.
The thing about Taft compared to those teams, with the possible exception of Deer Park, is that Taft just has more guys. Taft has 10 guys who have, Division I high school bodies, Division I high school athleticism, some of whom are supreme athletes. The type of team that can give them problems is less likely to be a Deer Park, a Dayton Stivers, so they play next, is more likely to be a Anna or a Versailles, who's going to play a different type of style than what Taft is used to seeing in the Cincinnati City League. So Taft definitely not a shoo-in, but I do agree with you, the favorite there. But, Deer Park's had a heck of a season and could easily give Taft a game and will be highly motivated if they can. You love the Bowling Green region in Division III. Cardinals, safe to say, right? So Cardinal Stritch, made it last year into the state semifinals, still have their best player in Joey Hollifield. Willard has a couple under the radar seniors I got to see on the AAU circuit last summer, but the favorite there in terms of what I've seen is probably Ottawa Glandorf.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. I was able to see the film on their game, which was their most competitive game that they lost to Shawnee. Glandorf just has so much size at all the positions, and then they shoot the ball so well. They can really spread the floor out. It's just one of those schools that always has guys that can dribble, pass, and shoot, which seems, pretty elementary, but it's not always the case. And it's a school that absolutely loves basketball. I mean, it's just, it's everything up there at OG. But like you mentioned, Cardinal Stritch, I didn't realize Joey Hollifield actually became their all-time leading scorer past Austin Adams, a kid you remember from the 2015 class.
Brian Bishop special.
Yeah. Losing Jordan Burton off that team last year, I think they lost a little bit of toughness. They've lost some games this year in that league. So I don't know if they have enough, but they're certainly in the mix. You mentioned Willard; they're very good. Western Reserve's another team. Chris Sheldon's team's very good. They're in that same league with South Central. Metamora Evergreen is a team. I asked Coach Tyson McLaughlin up at OG who he thought was somebody that wasn't being talked about enough, and he said Evergreen. They haven't lost since December 6th, and that's the only loss of the season for those guys. So kind of have that team on your radar. And then a team you can't ever count out, they've come out of this region before, is Columbus Afrocentric. They have a really nice backcourt, led by Callie Davis. They've done it before. Just 2 years ago, they were able to stun Archbold up there at BG in advance, which is not easy for a Columbus team to go out of their neck of the woods and get it done.
No, absolutely. And then, we talked about contrasting styles, and Afrocentric has the advantage there, and, they can throw a different look at some guys who are used to playing a more methodical style of basketball. So, yeah, Glandorf, I know everyone who's seen him, I know Petrus saw him, has been very, very high on him. Somebody else I was talking to had seen him and said the same thing. So, interesting. Stritch, when you got the best player, the best high school basketball player, you're always going to have a chance, and that's probably what Stritch has. So, interesting region to follow. Athens region, Division III. Harvest Prep versus Worthington Christian should take place this weekend if everything goes as planned. That is a district final game that almost feels like a regional final game. Can anybody beat the winner of that game, Harvest Prep or Worthington Christian? And then a team that I saw in the season opener that came down to my event, Proctorville Fairland, is a team you're always high on, Stubbs. Are they capable of advancing past the winner of that game?
Yeah, it's a shame that Harvest Prep and Worthington Christian, probably the two best teams in the region, are playing each other in a district final, which, as Morrow could probably tell you, last year was probably very similar when Harvest Prep played Columbus Academy in a district final at the Convention Center. I thought those were the two best teams in the region last year. Columbus Academy could have very easily beat Harvest Prep that night, and Harvest Prep goes on and wins the state. But, anytime you got a kid that is just tough and is just a gamer, a winner like C.J. Anthony, all-time leading scorer in Central Ohio basketball, you're going to have a chance. I think Worthington Christian, man for man, may be more talented than them, but you got to give Harvest Prep the advantage with Anthony and the experience that he has. Fairland, what a great job that they do down there. They lost that great class they had with I think it was 2018 with Van Horn and those guys. And then they just kind of looked like they were kind of gonna, go away, but they really did have a good season last year. And then this year they've been, just unbelievable. I don't think they have enough to get to the state. I think maybe they're still a year away, but what a great job they do down there as far as, just sports in general. Ridgewood is another team out of the East District. They only have 3 losses, 2 to Malvern and 1 to Highland, and both of those teams are still in the tournament. Ridgewood it's just a talented group of kids they have right now, basketball, football, baseball, all together. And then Chillicothe Zane Trace is my sleeper. They have a really good 1-2 punch in Cameron Evans and Nick Nessner. And Gary Kello, their head coach, has won the state before with the Chillicothe Cavaliers back in 2008 with Humpty Hitchens and Ray Chambers. So he definitely has a tournament pedigree. So, Harvest Prep, the safe bet because of C.J. Anthony, but Worthington Christian could certainly beat them.
Well, I was impressed with Worthington Christian when I saw them. They lost to Dayton Thurgood Marshall in the opener down here at the Ohio Valley Hoops Classic, but they were without 3 starters. And outside of the first quarter, they hung in the game over the last 3 quarters very nicely. So I'd love to see them at full health, and that's definitely a high-level game. Per one Michael Roth, next year is the year for Fairland. A lot of their guys are apparently juniors, and that brings me to the next region. And the next region, again, we're recording this on Tuesday, and what I was going to say is that Mike Roth, your boy Stubbs, just killed me when I saw him at the Play-by-Play Classic, at how you could come on this podcast and overlook his Fairview team in your Division III preview and how great they were. And just after that happens, they lose last night to Warrensville Heights. So Fairview was probably the favorite in Division III in Canton. Warrensville Heights knocks them off. Is Warrensville Heights the favorite, or who else is in that region still?
Well, let me start with this. Michael Roth messages me earlier in the week with nothing to do with Fairview, but he wanted to tell me that in his intramural game at OU that he knocked off Drew Klein and Wade Sheets from Convoy Crestview in his intramural game. So props for that, Mike. I never got back to you on that, but props for that. I'm sure that that was well written up in the Bobcat Review down in Athens. So as far as, Warrensville Heights was 12-12. So, and again, a team that plays a lot of Division II, Division I teams. Yeah, and they have talent. They have, a really good high school guard in Ramel Arnold, who has been tearing it up in the tournament. He had 32 against Beechwood. Last night, he hits a 4-point play to tie the game. And then they are able to survive in overtime. Fairview scores 96 points and loses the game in overtime. So I still think Warrensville Heights isn't out of the woods yet. Elyria Catholic is definitely a team with Ed Wright that could beat them, but I think Warrensville is the favorite. And I think whoever wins that district there is certainly the team that you can look for in Columbus.
Well, with all the crying that you do about, the name of the game is basketball and put the ball in the basket, you had to love 196 scoring effort. That's your type of game right there.
Yeah, that's like a third quarter score in the NBA.
Absolutely. Sorry about that. So, all right, moving on. Division II. Division II, want to start in the Dayton region. Again, we'll start down here. The district finals are already set for the 3 matchups that are Southwest based, and the 4th district in that region is the Columbus one. So in the Columbus one, I looked at a couple teams. I see London is on there, who I saw at the beginning of the year, has a great player, and Trey Woodyard has a lot of talent. Lyndon McKinley, Beechcroft, Easternmore Academy, also some teams that jump off the page there. So real quick, before we get to the other teams in the D2 Dayton region, who's going to come out of Columbus to make the regionals?
Well, I think the interesting thing about Columbus is, and this kind of goes to show you, definitely in Division II and Division III, your top seeds all ran to the Athens regional, which obviously gives you a hint of where they wanted to go to stay away from that Dayton region. But I saw London on Saturday. They're without Trey Woodyard. I'm assuming he's going to be out for the rest of the year. But Eastmore Academy, man, that is a program that they just continue to win, and they do it with toughness and grit. But and Morrow could probably tell you, but I think when you look at this, I would not be surprised that the winner of that Lyndon McKinley Beechcroft game is the team that advances to the region there.
Well, whoever. Oh, good. Sorry, Morrow. Go ahead.
Lyndon and Beechcroft are, obviously are both in the North Division, and Lyndon won the first 2 games. It's going to be interesting to see if Lyndon can beat them for a third time, because I know come tournament time, that's always, especially with teams in the same league, that's really interesting. But yeah, I do agree that I think that Linden Beechcroft winner probably will win that district.
Back in the day, they would have played Linden versus Beechcroft at Zach Fleer's apartment complex on the hoop half court with and Fleer would have done the halftime rap show too. But things have changed now, so we'll be watching for them.
It probably would have been like Linden Brookhaven or something like that.
Right. They gone though. So, well, the other teams, like you said, Stubb, Division II, Dayton region, really loaded, high level matchup, and I'm beyond pissed off. I will be missing the entire district tournament in Southwest Ohio because it only takes place over Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and I'll be in Florida for a work trip that's going to be terrible. But really exciting game for Division II. I think Kettering Alter versus Wyoming. High-level basketball game. It has a chance to be. I'll definitely be trying to get the tape on that game. Then you have Purcell Marion, who defeated both McNicholas and Cincinnati Woodward. Couple upsets for Coach Kerr after going to Division III state championship Final Four last year. He'll take on Trotwood, who after winning Division II last year, lost a lot of guys, but still was retooling and scoring about 100 points a game. And then the last matchup, you have Cincinnati Hughes, who just ran through the Cincinnati City League undefeated. They did lose a couple games out of conference, one of them being to Thurgood Marshall at Hughes, a game I watched in December. I think Hughes has gotten better since then, but that region is really, really exciting. I think Hughes and Trotwood are favorites to advance. We'll see how it goes, but that Alter Wyoming game, Stubbs, I think is really exciting.
Yeah, I mean, to me, when I was looking at that on paper, I mean, that's like I know Wyoming is undefeated, but Alter plays a very good schedule. I mean, that game's like a coin flipper to me. I mean, you could tell me that Kettering Alter won that game, and I would not be surprised at all. Wyoming has one of my favorite guys, and Prater. Also, Walker's had a really good year for them. Just for the sake that they've been so good over the last few years in basketball, I would like to see Wyoming advance here. But this is definitely a 50-50 game. I mean, records aside, I think these teams are very evenly, right down the middle. Trotwood, Coach Kerr's done a great job there at Purcell after losing a ton last year off a team that went to the state semifinals. They come in, they beat McNick, they beat Woodward in the tournament. But Rocky, only 2 losses on the year. Interesting, both games they lost, they gave up 100 or more to Ballard and St. V, which is not surprising. They only play one way, and they play that way 32 minutes. And then has anybody, and you could tell me this because you're down there, but has anybody done a better job than Brian Wyatt at Hughes? I mean, 10-0 in the league. You lose Paul McMillan IV to Woodward. You think you're going to get Rayvon Griffin. He plays with you in the summer a little bit, and then he decides he's going to go to Taft. And all you do is just beat those teams this year, regardless. And it's just, I think it's one of the more, kind of like South was for so long in Columbus, a very underrated program around the state, Cincinnati Hughes. And I know they lost to Thurgood the first time, and that game was back in December, but I would be highly surprised if Hughes doesn't win this game this time around.
Yeah, I think Hughes is definitely the favorite this time around. I mean, their kids just play with such a chip on their shoulder, and their culture is so strong. And when you get to the City League teams that you have in Cincinnati and Dayton, a lot of them talk about the culture aspect, but Brian Wyatt really is about it, and definitely happy for those kids. Keontae Thomas has had a great senior year, played a kind of a minor role, though he did start last year, and this year when the ball's in his hand, people are saying he can score 20, and Cameron McKenzie's just established himself as one of the best players in Cincinnati, so super happy for those guys. I actually want to have Coach Wyatt on the podcast. One more thing on this region, though, Stubbs, and I like both of these guys a lot, so I know they'll take it the right way if they hear this. Can you imagine being an official and having to officiate Scott Kerr, Purcell Marion versus Rocky Rockgold, Trotwood Madison?
Hey man, you better bring earplugs, something. I mean, those guys are relentless.
Those are two of the biggest animals in coaching.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, that will be something.
Man, if I'm upset about missing one thing this weekend, it's going to be that. So we'll have to make sure we clip this and send this to, especially to Curry, who's a great guy on social media. So, Division Two, Bowling Green region. The team that everybody's talking about is Lima Shawnee. The team that I know, like the scouting service, people like me have seen are Toledo Rogers. Just jumps off the page with the Division One talent they have and just the ridiculous athleticism. Other teams in there, you've got the Upper Sandusky Ontario winner versus the Shelby Norwalk winner. Shelby has a kid and TJ Pugh having a big year. You got Defiance, you got Sandusky Rossford, and then you've got the one Cleveland district out of there, which has Central Catholic, amongst some other teams. So talk about Shawnee and Rogers. You know, they don't play yet, but just, you know, the ability of those two teams and anybody else you think might be relevant in that Division II Bowling Green region.
Yeah, I think when you look at that first district there, that Shelby Norwalk game is going to be interesting. Shelby wants to play extremely fast. You mentioned TJ Pugh. At Norwalk, you know, they want to dictate the pace, and they've obviously won a state here in recent memory back in 2014. I think that's a very intriguing game. Shelby's a very junior-oriented team, so they're going to be very good next year. And then you look down, I know Defiance is another team. They want to control the tempo. They've played really well lately. Kirk Lehman, another team. They won the 2015 state championship. They're coming off, they're playing Bryan, which is a team they beat 36-34 in a regular season, so you know what type of pace they want to play. Unfortunately, the winner of that game will likely get Lima Shawnee. Shawnee's already played Defiance this year. I think they beat them by 30+. Shawnee has just not let off the gas this year. It does not matter who they play. They have not let off the gas. You know, whether it was Lima Senior, who's an extremely talented team, beat them by 15, beat OG by 12. So you know that there's really no team that they can't, or style of play that they can't play. And George Mangus is one of the kids that, you know, not a lot of people outside of that area know who he is, but that guy, like you said earlier, he can put ball in basket. And that is still the object of this game, and he does it very well. But their other guys all have size at every position. I really like their one of their lead guards, John Barker. He can really shoot it. Their guys with size can shoot it. They can handle it. They're going to be a very tough matchup for everybody in that D2 tournament. Rogers, I think, if I'm not mistaken, is dealing with some injury issues right now. I mean, still on paper, though, they have so much talent. And then you look at Sandusky and Rossford. Sandusky's had a great year. Only one loss was to Norwalk. Rossford's only has 3 losses. And then the team that, I mean, I've seen them in Columbus before. I know years are different, coaches are different, but Cleveland Central Catholic is just I like their grit. You know, they're grimy. They're just hard on the eyes to watch, like as far as their style of play. And then the other team, Holy Name there with Quentin Richardson, who's had a really good senior season. But, you know, if there's one team that a lot of people think it's Rogers, but I think the one team is Cleveland Central Catholic that could spoil Shawnee's trip to Columbus. And Shawnee has a lot of juniors on this team led by Mangus. So they're certainly not done if they don't make it this year. But Cleveland Central Catholic, I think, is the team that kind of could play the spoiler there if it happens.
Next region, Division II, being the Athens region. The only thing I know about most of these teams is that Babalik went to East Liverpool. They're still in. You went to St. Clairsville. They're still in. Who are we looking at in this district and these district matchups as, you know, teams that could come out of the region?
Well, you forgot to mention that Babalik probably interviewed or inquired about the head coaching job of all these teams at one point in time. So
every one of them.
He did play at East Liverpool, by the way. He was a very good player. I think he averaged about 26 a game his senior season. But Yeah, East Liverpool's had a good season. John Glenn's had a good season. New Philly's had a good season. I don't think any of those teams are any of their best teams in school history by any means. You got Vincent Warren against Logan Elm. Logan Elm's coach Doug Stuyvesant does as well as anybody in the state as far as X's and O's, game planning, things like that. And then Meadowbrook, they've had an incredible run. They've won 5 conference championships in a row. They were at the state 2 years ago, kind of got ran out of the gym by Trotwood Madison. But I think, and then Tri-Valley is a team that bumped down from Division I. They play in the Central District Division I. Now they're back in 2. They play my alma mater tomorrow night. And side note, the last time these two teams played was my senior year of high school in '99. Tri-Valley unfortunately ended my career. So, but I think the winner of this region is coming from Columbus. Again, you're looking at a very heavy district. Jonathan Alder, DeSales, those two teams have played each other. Jonathan Alder won a game, I think it was like a 5-point game early in the season. And then Heath is undefeated. But when you look at Heath, I think they're kind of a year ahead of schedule with McLaughlin and Williams. Those guys are sophomores, and then quite a few of their other guys are underclassmen as well. I think their third leading scorer is a sophomore as well. So I look at this district and I think, okay, Des Watson is the kind of guy that could get a team to the state, kind of like a Morgan Safford at Hartley last year. Got that team on a big run. Watson's had kind of a breakout year statewide. He's averaging about 23 a game. So I think any one of those three, I think Heath is still a year away, even though they've got the great record. They were in a tough one with a rival, Granville, the other night. But I think DeSales or Jonathan Alder is the team that's going to eventually advance to the state out of this region.
Well, the last Division II region is the Canton region, and last year it was kind of fun to talk about with St. Vincent St. Mary's being up in Division I, but they're back in Division II. I mean, they have been one of, if not the best teams in high school basketball in Ohio this year, so they're the clear-cut favorite. I mean, I wrote some other teams down here, but these teams are going to have a very, very tough time competing. The two teams who I think have a chance would be Lutheran East out of Cleveland, who has the top-end talent to match St. Vincent St. Mary's to some extent, has the depth of talent, I think, to match him. And then Menor Lake Catholic having, two Division I signees in Luke Frazier and Luca Eller. But this is still the Akron St. Vincent St. Mary Invitational, Stub.
Yeah, I mean, people can say what they want about Drew Joyce and, do they get players from outside the area and all that. Yeah, sure they do. But at the end of the day, when it comes down to winning in big games, that guy does it as well as anybody. And he's done it before with teams that don't have sensational talent, that top-end talent, like they do this year with Harris and Pryor and Branham. But, Lutheran East, they beat St. Vincent St. Mary's on February 7th, overtime game. They beat them by 3, which is probably detrimental for Lutheran East that they beat them. Because St. V will not be caught by surprise by any means. The thing about Lutheran East is, they lost some of their top-end talent, whether it was graduation or whether it was guys transferring out. But, this is probably the best year they've had in the regular season. I mean, their 3 losses are to Moeller, Eds, and Shaker. And really, Moeller got them by double figures, but the Eds Shaker games were extremely close, where in the past they've played those teams, but they've got blown out. So, those two teams are obviously there. But Menor Lake Catholic started the year kind of slow, but they haven't lost since January 24th. They recently beat Menor, so they could play with the big boys. Eller and Frazier, obviously a great 1-2 combo, but boy, it would be really hard to go against St. Vincent St. Mary's not being in Columbus.
Right, and Drew Joyce kind of is just on their schedule at the beginning of the year for them to go there. So, we expect them to do the same thing this year. So let's move on now to the big boy, the granddaddy Division I. And in Division I in the Cincinnati region, everybody's always going to say that Moeller's the favorite. They've been to 3 state title games in a row. They've won 2 state championships in a row. They're probably the favorites to win Division I this year. Beyond that, though, you've got Lakota East is very, very strong. They're going to take on Beaver Creek. You've got Moeller taking on Springboro. You've got Lakota West, just kind of been the upset team of the season. Happy for what Jimmy Leon's building there. Julian Mackey's had an unbelievable senior season, leading his team past Mason and Princeton league rivals in the tournament. They're going to take on your boy Brooke Cups in Centerville, another team who's ahead of schedule. And then probably the best game, even though they've already met twice before in the district finals, will be LaSalle versus St. Xavier. LaSalle being that other team along with Lakota East, who people think can give Moeller a game, although to be fair to Moeller, they beat LaSalle twice and really handled them the second time. That being said, Stubbs, from down here, the dynamic down here for LaSalle and St. Xavier to be meeting in the district finals, the GCL being kind of back is a good thing for Southwest Ohio basketball.
Yeah, I love it. I kind of, when Noska got hired at St. Xavier, I was like, okay, maybe St. Xavier reemerges. I feel like Southwest Ohio basketball needs St. Xavier to be good, and just kind of refuel that rivalry with Moeller, which Moeller has just absolutely owned over the last 15, 20 years. And, LaSalle is always, they do it differently, but they're always going to be a very tough out in that league. But it would be great to see St. Xavier kind of reemerge where they were in that early 2000, late 90, even up into the mid 2000s with Gibbler and Johnny Wolf and those guys. So when you look at this region, though, it's been really hard for the Dayton teams to overcome the Cincinnati teams outside of the couple years that Wayne was extremely good and extremely talented.
The whole class, the couple classes Wayne, right?
Yeah. So outside of that, and then you had the year that Cumberland was able to get Wilmington there, which was another year that Moeller could have very easily been there. You know this better than I do. This region runs through Moeller. They lost one game. It was on the road to St. Vincent St. Mary's. And outside of that, they just handled their business again. It just Carl Kramer doing what he does, and Lakota East has had a really good year. Clint Atkins, I know, is a guy that you really like what he's doing there. They've got some. I would say if any of the teams left, they have the pieces, talent-wise, to be able to at least provide some resistance for Moeller.
Right. No, I completely agree. And, Moeller's still the favorite this year. They're still going to be the favorite next year when that, unbelievable junior class of seniors. After that, we'll see the door open a little bit. Centerville's got some young guys. East is building a monster. LaSalle's going to continue to get it done. St. X is going to get better with Mike Noska doing a great job there. Division I Columbus region, as I see it, and things could change, but if the top seeds kind of hold, and it's tough to do this year, I know, it looks like we'll have Columbus South versus Pickerington Central, with a game of a lot of athletes. That'd be a fun basketball game. We'll have Pickerington North versus the winner of Olentangy Liberty, Thomas Worthington. If it's Pickerington North versus Thomas Worthington, you've got a whole lot of talent. We'll have Hilliard Bradley versus the winner of Dublin Kaufman Newark. And then we'll probably have Walnut Ridge versus Gahanna Lincoln, and two teams who have kind of taken Columbus by storm this year and definitely exceeded expectations. So it's still early. Before we talk about the region, just talk about the district matchups in Columbus. I mean, who do you see advancing to the regionals or having the best chance to advance to the regionals?
Yeah, I think if this, kind of what you had mentioned there happens, I think that a lot of people would be happy with those matchups on Saturday. But you look like, you know, and Zach and Jason and the guys at 270, obviously, I mean, just you cannot compete with the coverage that they provide of these teams, and not only Central Ohio, but even kind of on the fringe areas now. They could tell you even better than I could that this is a year where you've mentioned about 8 to 10 teams, and I could make a case for 7 of those teams where I could get you to believe that will be the team that's going to be at the state tournament. And even some of the, like, Pickerington Central plays Delaware Hayes, who I saw this past Friday, and that certainly, with Delaware Hayes' style of play and the way they defend, and they got a lot of guys that can handle the ball and a 6'6" swingman like Burris, that's not going to be an easy game for Pick Central. I mean, do I think Central will advance? Yes, but I don't think it's going to be an easy game. I think everybody wants to see Pickerington Central and South. I think that would be fantastic as far as for fan viewership. Yeah, and then, you know, look at Pickerington North. I mean, they have an extremely difficult game coming up tomorrow night against Chillicothe. Chillicothe is very good. That is, I mean, I believe Pickerington North will win that game, but it's not going to be easy. And then Liberty and Thomas Worthington is kind of an enigma. With those three guys, with Solinger and Settles and Huey, like, they could beat anybody in the region. But they've lost some games this year where you're kind of head scratching. But, you know, I feel like in a big game, those three guys, if they're good, they can beat anybody. Bradley, obviously, their style of play. I think that's the one thing. If you want one team to get out of this region, that their style of play can allow them to compete against, I'm not saying beat, I'm saying compete with the Mollers. They've already beat Eds. I think that is the team that you would want there if you're looking for a team that can kind of dance with any of those teams. Kaufman, I think they're you know, I don't think they're quite there on that level. Newark, Quackenbush is as good as anybody in the state as far as guys that roam the sidelines. Just depends on how they shoot the ball. Walnut Ridge has been great. Von Cameron Davis has been just amazing this year. And then Gahanna Lincoln. I mean, you cannot count Gahanna Lincoln out against anybody in this region when you have a guy like Sean Jones, who's a flat-out winner. He's as tough as anybody. He's as tough as anybody I've seen since Little Keon from Mansfield Senior. And may have more natural talent than Keon did. But Gahanna Lincoln is really not getting...
Was that a Coach Bob impression? Was that a Coach Bob impression of what you said, Lil Keon?
Yeah. So, I mean, you know, Sean Jones and Gahanna, one loss on the season. I don't feel like they've gotten the credit they deserve for the season they've had. The only loss was at Pickerington North. And Tony Steib actually has a team this year that he can finally coach. Like, there's no distractions. There's no sideshows. It's just, you know, guys that have bought in, they know who the best player is on the team, and that's your first key to success. And they really get after it on the defensive end. But I think he just has a team that is absolutely bought in, and it's translated into that fantastic season.
Well, I unfortunately haven't gotten to see Lincoln. I think I've seen most of the Columbus teams on this list, if not this year, at least last year. Unfortunately, Lincoln wasn't in the play-by-play classic, which is why I stayed down here in Cincinnati for our play-by-play classic. I would have gone up there, and Sean Jones definitely establishing himself as one of the best players in the state of Ohio on a high school basketball court. And I followed a lot of the video on Facebook, Instagram. I think most of it's 270. I don't know if all of it is, but they've done a lot of great stuff on him. So I'd love to see, from a scouting standpoint, them advance and see them. But, you know, Columbus is tough to it's going to be the most fun region because, like you said, any of those guys have a chance to win. And this is the time in March where the George Howards and the Kurt Stubbs pop in the Pickerington section, and everybody's got an opinion. So we'll definitely be following that. Let's talk about Toledo-Akron region. And there are a couple competitors, but this is the St. Edward region, and that they are going to be major favorites, in my opinion, to win that region. They've got the top-end talent, they've got the depth, they've got the coaching, they've got the experience. Not only are their best players seniors, but they've played in at least one Final Four. Some of them have played in two Final Fours in the past. So they're going to play the winner of St. Ignatius and Cleveland Rhodes. Cleveland Rhodes, a very dangerous team. A lot of talent. Got to see them at the Play-by-Play Classic. You also have Lorraine in there. And then on the Toledo side, the two Toledo districts, I would think Lima Senior is the best team there, where Central Catholic is also in the mix, as well as some other teams. But talk about that region with St. Ed's and then Lima Senior or anybody else who you think can challenge them.
Yeah, I think for St. Ed's, kind of the battle is against theirself. When you look at Huffman, you look at Foster, you look at Blanton, those three guys are looking to play in their third state tournament. They got a lot of experience. I said this on your podcast back at the beginning of the season. I thought that, this is the team that is the favorite because of the experience that they have. They're such a, veteran club. But probably, they're looking at that Ignatius Rhodes game. Ignatius is a huge rivalry of them, and they beat them both times this year. Do you want to play them a third time, or would you rather play a team that's very dangerous in Rhodes? So usually Eds doesn't have much of a problem getting out of the district. So I still think, they I don't want to say they walk, but I think they comfortably move out of that district. I would really like to see a regional final game with them and Lima Senior. Flannery against Quincy Simpson.
Would that be in Toledo or Akron this year?
You know what? I'm not sure where that. I know that kind of.
That's a definite factor too.
Oh, for sure. Lima Senior and Quincy in general. I could see if they played Eds. They'd kind of come in with that Lima chip on their shoulder.
Right.
And obviously they have talent with Josiah Fulcher, going to Bowling Green, Jameer Simpson. They got the young sophomore guard. They got a lot of just tough, gritty role guys. So if Eds and Lima Senior play, don't think that that's a shoe-in that Eds would just beat them, because Lima Senior will come ready. Say what you want about Q, but his teams are always tough. They're going to defend, and they're going to compete. They're not going to back down from anyone. So that would be a great regional game.
No, I wholeheartedly agree. And, it's just like we talked about with Moeller, Eds is the favorite, but they're not a shoe-in. And, if anybody's going to do it, Lima Senior appears to be the team that's going to do it, but some other candidates there as well. The last region, I think, which is the Cleveland region, I think is a lot like the Columbus region in that we're not really sure. Medina is going to have a good chance to win their district. The district of Mentor versus the winner of Cleveland Heights Brush, a matchup that I saw at the Play-by-Play Classic. Any of those three teams could win that. Cleveland Heights with that whirlwind situation where the temporary restraining order got him back in the tournament. You got Shaker Heights, who's going to take on Sonny Johnson and Garfield Heights. And then you've got a team I know Petrus is high on, two teams that Petrus is high on, which is Uniontown Green, who will face the winner of Canton McKinley, who he's high on, versus Youngstown Boardman. Again, not worrying too much about the regionals. We'll get back to that next week. But in the district capacity, who do you really like?
Yeah, I think Medina is probably the favorite to get out of their district. I think you hit the nail on the head. Would you be surprised if it was Mentor, Cleveland Heights, or Brush that advanced out of that district? Those three teams, no. I could see any one of them. And I was thinking about this the other day. Wouldn't that be something if Cleveland Heights ended up in the Final Four? Boy, that would be an interesting story. That thing would write itself. You could make a case for all three of those teams not only to win the district, but you could make a case all three of those teams would not be surprised if they got to Columbus. I've seen Shaker Heights this year. I like them. They play hard. They play tough. The Fighting Sunnies. against Solon. Solon's coach probably had the tweet of the year.
Hold on. What did he tweet?
He was, the funny thing, he tweeted at the St. Ignatius coach that he was just, basically he appreciated that he came out to support his junior high players.
Oh, I saw that. That was tremendous.
That was A+ tweet for sure. I'm with TJ. Man, I watched. I have not seen Uniontown Green live. I watched. You could just tell in the brief, video I was looking at. They really know how to play and kind of play together and just your like old fashioned like basketball team. They're historically always really, really good. They don't get the credit they deserve because they play in a league with McKinley, Uniontown Lake, and Massillon Jackson. So those teams obviously take most of the headlines, but Uniontown Green is really good almost every year. And then Boardman's had a nice 2-year run. So I like Green to win this district. I like Shaker. I like Medina. And then the other district, Mentor, Cleveland Heights, Brush. If I had to, I like Mentor's guards. They've lost some games this year where I kind of was like, I thought they'd win that game. Cleveland Heights, we finally found out who Garvin's with, so they definitely, they could win this district. They certainly have the talent with Farmer and Garvin and Brush, obviously, with maybe the most dominant player in the state in John Hughley.
Well, and then Cleveland Heights also with E.J. Farmer has been to the state tournament each of his first 2 seasons, even though it was smaller school basketball with Cleveland Heights, so he's been there before. But no, that's a great rundown, and I'm interested. I think Mentor is really intriguing, even though I haven't seen them. Could see them slipping out of there, but that's going to be a fun one. So that's a great rundown of the district tournament, Stubbs. Our plan here is next week we're going to have Fleer and Petrus on. We're going to talk about the regional tournament and what we think there. And then I'd like to go ahead and ask you right here live if you join us again the week after to preview the state tournament.
Yeah, you know what? I feel like you got a C+ guest tonight, and then you're bringing the A shows on next week. So you might as well bring it back down to average right before the state tournament. So.
Yeah, and I was thinking, Stubbs, I don't think I have seen you since the state tournament last year.
Well, Albertson, I haven't messed up a stat since then, so not much has changed.
Well, I'm certainly looking forward to our time together. But hey, before you go, I want to ask you one other thing. I didn't think to put this in the script, but we talked earlier about the 196 game last night, and that's a lot of scoring. But there also were some tweets, some social media stuff going on about a game, and you'll remember better than me. But there were multiple reports, but one really big one of guys holding the ball early in the game, and having playoff scores where 24 points. I think the final score was like 24-18. Again, I could be off a couple points, but when it comes to playoff basketball, ball holding, stalling, shot clock, all that stuff, what are your thoughts on that as it works for the OHSAA?
That's a tough one because, from a basketball standpoint, I want to see both teams that are capable of playing and can, score the ball. But and the other side of the coin though is if there is no shot clock, there are some teams that are just completely outmanned as far as talent wise, and if you have kids that are willing to want to do that to win the game, it is a good strategy but in that game I was just kind of wondering, the defense never tried to force the tempo.
That's what I didn't get either. That you just don't see, if you're the better team, just go get them.
Yeah, and I played in an era in the mid to late 90s where that stall ball was huge. Even teams that had talent were doing it, which I didn't ever understand. We kind of went away from it, but there are still some teams that do that. There's some teams that score low because of the way they play, but you don't see that as much as you used to anymore, just the blatant, flat-out holding the ball. But, yeah, you pay your $6 or $7 to watch the game as a fan. And the best part of those things, if you've ever been to a game like that, is the fans yelling back and forth at each other while that's going on, while the guy's standing out there with the ball underneath his arm. It is quite entertaining, but, I don't see that. It's not basketball. Do I think it's a good strategy from a coaching standpoint at times? Yeah, if the other team lets you do it. But, certainly I would rather go to a game where it's 196 that guys can actually dribble, pass, and shoot.
Okay. No, I agree. And no, like you said, you're paying your $7. If you're Chaz Wolf, you're probably paying double after today. But you're paying your money, and you should have the right to see a basketball game. And it's just not a good. To me, it's just not a good life lesson in that. We're basically just backing down to them. But, I understand the other side to some extent, but wanted to see your thoughts. So, no, that was a great overall district preview, Stubbs. Tremendous information. For guys listening, I want to thank Kurt as always. We'll be back next week with TJ Petrus and Zach Fleer, as well as Jason, to talk about the regional tournament, specifically Division I, Division II. We'll get into the big matchups there, and then we'll have Kurt back on for the state tournament. So signing off for the Triple Double Podcast, we've got Jason Morrow, Kurt Stubbs. My name's Corey Albertson. Thanks for listening. This podcast is brought to you by PlayEasy.com. For players, coaches, or casual athletes looking to book a sports facility, as well as owners and managers of sports facilities, PlayEasy.com is the new one-stop site for streamlined services. If you're looking for a place to practice, play, host your tournament, camp, or other, simply go to PlayEasy.com and create a booking request for your area. Your request will go out to surrounding facilities who will respond with their best offer. Once you receive the offer that best fits your needs, book the facility and you're ready to play. For facility owners and managers, PlayEasy puts the power in your hands to maximize the usage and visibility of your facility. Register your facility for free today at PlayEasy.com. PlayEasy.com is the booking site built by athletes, coaches, and facility managers, and is proud to help bring you the Triple Double Podcast. This podcast is also brought to you by Anago Cleaning Systems. Are you tired of struggling in a dead-end job? If so, Anago Cleaning Systems has what you're looking for, an opportunity to go into business for yourself, but not by yourself. With franchising opportunities available for as little as a $2,500 down payment, purchasing an Anago franchise has never been easier. Once you own your Anago franchise, you're licensed to clean commercial facilities all around the greater Cincinnati, Dayton, or Columbus areas with the support of Anago's sales, quality control, operational, and accounting staff. Call 513-332-0033 today for your opportunity to be your own boss and grow your own commercial cleaning company under the guidance of Anago's proven and successful system. Again, call 513-332-0033 to learn more. With Anago, your future starts today.